This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Thank you for joining the City of Kingston's Complete Street Advisory Council. Today is October 14th, 2020. My name is Greg Krupp, the Complete Streets Liaison and organizer for our virtual meetings. Before we begin our meeting, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines to help us navigate this system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that members of the public and press remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. As organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. Committee members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a committee member or staff wishes to speak, they can raise their hands. The chairperson will call on them before they speak by stating their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the city's website at a later date. Although we will not have public speaking tonight, you can submit written requests, comments to the City of Kingston Clerk Lisa Tinty at emtinti@kingston-ny.gov or by dropping them off at the Dropbox location outside the side door of City Hall. We also encourage members of the public to reach out to committee chairs. If you have any audio issues, send a text message to the following number, 845-418-9634. That's me. I will repeat this number again, but be aware that phone calls will not be answered during this meeting. The number to text is 845-418-9634. As organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately, although I don't expect to. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance the chair, Robert Dennison, vice chair, John Grossbollen, committee members, Sarah Wank, Claudette Ford, city staff, Emily Flynn, and council member, Reynolds Scott Childress, as well as me, Gregory Krupp. Thank you for your patience during these difficult times. On behalf of Complete Streets, I wish you and your family good health. I now turn the floor over to Bob Dennison.
I think you do that very well, Greg. I think you have a great future in this. Well, I don't see any guests, therefore I'm not expecting any public comment. I don't know if Rennie, do you count as a guest? You could maybe, but I don't know if you want to make a public comment.
Yes, whatever it is, I'm against it.
Okay. You've been listening to the hearings. I can tell you've been listening to the hearings probably in here.
I have a public comment that was submitted beforehand by Tanya Garment that I'll just read through. It was an email regarding missing bluestone in front of 52 to 68 Ward Street. I had sent this email around, but she wanted me to just say this for the committee now. So a year and a half ago, Paul Joff removed a large section of bluestone in front of his property at 52 to 68 Ward Street. Multiple neighbors tried in vain to stop this theft. We spoke to him, called the mayor, called the police, and called the after hours DPW number. When Mr. Joff told the police that were sent to the scene that he owned it, they believed him, so he was able to leave with it. Chief Tinty later said to a resident that he must have had a variance. Mr. Joff did not obtain a variance. He only claimed that it belonged to him. Also, Mr. Joff had told me, Tanya Garment, and I had reported that he had no intention of even depositing it at the Bluestone Bank. He was putting it in storage. There are some other paragraphs here, but the gist is the case of it, 5268 Ward Street sidewalk shows that even when someone is caught in the act, the city has no apparent procedure in place to stop them from carting away the bluestone for the public speakers, for the public sidewalks. Worse yet, it seems the city was unable to ensure that the sidewalk is repaired in a timely manner. The cavity remains at the site to this day. So she submitted that for the council.
And it is on the agenda later. I assume, do you have more to add to that as it goes forward or not, Greg?
No.
Okay. So I guess I would suggest that we might want to send a note to, I guess, the police, right? We did it without a permit. We did it without it's not his. And just see what Chief Tinty has to say about that. I can write up a note for him, and we'll see what he has to say. Good. I would guess it's again, it's, I don't know. Should they have arrested him and taken him away? I don't know.
Was it in the public right away?
It apparently was, right?
Yeah, it was a sidewalk in front of his property, which has since been sold to a different property owner. And I guess the big concern is that there just doesn't seem to be a procedure in place for how we deal with this, because it's been missing for over a year, I guess, at this point, or close to it.
Is the policy, and maybe one day I'll read it here, but is the policy here that the homeowner is responsible for the sidewalk or responsible for the property up to the middle of the street, even though there is, easement for public right of way?
The sidewalk code says that adjacent property owners are responsible to maintain the sidewalk around their property. So that is the law in this town. John, you've got something to say. John? He's frozen.
Yeah, I'm gonna log off and try to log back in. The audio keeps breaking up and I can't understand what's going on.
Oh,
I was trying to understand why he thought he owned it. I guess that's where I was getting from, because, if you're going under the impression that I'm responsible to maintain it, then I guess, not that I think he should have taken it, but I'm just trying to possibly figure out the mindset.
right. He, I assume he thought he owned it because he had I don't know why, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, kind of interesting that he would just take that up. That's all.
If nothing else, he did work within the right of way without a permit. He needs a permit from DPW to do that work, which
Right.
he did not get. So there's clearly something that he has, a law that he has violated. The ownership issue is probably less clear.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I don't know what Public Works had to say about it. Did Ed have anything to add, or Ed just kind of said, I don't know? We haven't heard back from Ed Norman.
I haven't reached out to anybody regarding this. I just got it as a public comment. So
Okay. Well, I'm on the Public Works Commission. Yeah, you're right about it. There's three things. You're I'll reach out to Ed and say, what's the deal with this? And that we've got a complaint, and
Well, I agree with you that obviously he did work in the public right of way without a permit, so there is a definite violation there. I'm also kind of in a quandary as to, well, who actually, what's the ownership fall at this point? Because by insurance, if somebody falls in front of his house, I'm sure the city's going to say, well, shouldn't that be covered under your homeowner's policy? So it's kind of a gray area that maybe needs to be fleshed out at some point.
yeah. Yeah, you're right, and it's really kind of who the ownership issue is unclear. I guess the city attorney should have an opinion about that, I would guess.
Yeah.
That's above my pay grade. I don't know anything about that. But my sense is anything in the right of way is owned by the city. But not necessarily. I mean,
Exactly. So it sounds like it raises a number of issues that heretofore have probably not been determined.
right.
So
Yeah, right of way is not fee title. So, there are many occasions where public right of way, roadways are a right of way, but not a fee title. So ownership is not a part of the deal. The ownership still reverts to the adjacent property owner. It depends on what the deed says, depends on where the property line is.
So.
Yeah, it gets
Is this-
complicated. Sarah?
I'm sorry, is this in the historic district?
It's down the Rondout, right?
this is on Worth Street.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah.
in which case they're required to keep their bluestone sidewalks.
Yeah,
Right.
clearly you violated those permitting stuff, like you're in the historic district and requirement to keep your bluestone and but I don't know, it's not going to be a clear-cut deal. I can see
He's
that already.
keeping it in a storage shed, so he is keeping it.
Yeah, right. So
I do.
you probably sold it to somebody. That's not, because if they were nice old stones, they're valuable.
Right. And I think that's the issue. I think, I'm not exactly sure on this, but I think the city gets first right of refusal of any bluestone sidewalks.
Yep.
It should go to our bank if somebody's gonna take it up.
Yeah,
That's the issue, is that the bluestone was excavated out and it wasn't given to the city and it wasn't put back. So it's an issue of, that, as well as the maintenance of the sidewalk. It's not a passable area right now. And there could be a claim against that as well.
but he sold the property, so he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah,
Right. The new property owner is going to be on the hook for that.
right.
Doesn't sound like, doesn't sound like an ideal citizen. So I'll write to Ed Norman and probably copy the chief and say, what's going on with this? We got this complaint. What are we going to do about it? And see where it goes from there. I think it's going to be a long and drawn out adventure, is my prediction.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, so that's number one on the agenda. Number two, review and approval of the June minutes. Has everybody read them? And if there's any corrections or any comments, or I'm looking for a motion to accept.
I move that the minutes be accepted from the June meeting.
Sarah seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion, I guess, would be the right thing to do. No discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstainers? Minutes are accepted. Thank you, Greg, for that. Your minutes have been very good, actually, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Old business, and Kristen arrived just in time. Hi, Kristen.
For all the old stuff.
The project updates, I know I assume that the website is absolutely up to date about all the projects that are going on in the city. Is that a correct statement?
It's not a correct statement. The website is not up to date at the moment.
But there's a lot going on, though.
There is a lot going on. So if you have questions about specific projects, I think we can answer them.
I do know that I talked to the chief, I don't know, his engineer, operating officer of Collins, DA Collins, on another issue. And he said he was, finished digging the big holes and he was looking forward to getting wrapped up, and he was optimistic about making his schedule. I don't know if that's what you guys have heard as well.
Yeah.
He did say disparaging things about digging holes in Kingston and finding all kinds of stuff that he never expected to find. So, however, he's overcome that.
Yeah, I spoke with him on Friday, and he says his schedule is to have all the underground utilities done by Thanksgiving, and shortly thereafter will be their shutdown for the season. And then next spring, all they're really doing is building the roundabout at that point, which is like the easy part,
Right. So, and the signal seems to be working, not bad. I don't know if there's been crashes around it. I know there's been some congestion around it, but seems to me that there's not a lot of crashing going on. But that's a good thing. That's the only one I know about. Broadway looks good. How's Broadway going? Everybody's happy? Shop owners are all pleased.
Well, I guess I just have to say, unfortunately, there's a silver lining of the pandemic that, really made the construction a little easier.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
would have,
your walk-in trade is down, and that's helping us. Yeah, traffic, I think, is probably coming back up, but it's good. That's good. And the other stuff, I see other stuff, paving and random other stuff going on. So you guys have been busy.
And you get my text, dude.
Yeah, well, Greenkill Avenue, I think, is almost done completely. That's a New York State DOT project, and I believe I saw an email earlier this week that asked if we had any final requests because they're getting ready to close out and finish that project.
And the Empire State Trail's doing okay? Sarah had something.
Kristen, do you know anything about when the trees that they planted and then took out are getting replanted?
They should be planted before they finish the project. So before they leave, they will plant those trees.
Yeah,
Which,
planting is driven by calendar. And the planting season, if memory serves, you're looking at fall. They don't do it in the summer. They don't do it in the.
No, I understand that. It's just they put in all the trees and then they took like half of them out because they weren't the right size as the contract specified. So, do you know, is anyone in touch with that subcontractor? Because they're also not watering those trees, which is, I believe, both part of the contract and like super important to keep them alive.
He's got a period. He's got a period of establishment if it's a state job for a year. So if he doesn't water them, it's on him. And they die, he's going to have to come back and replace them.
Yeah, but it would be nice if he just watered them. They put gator bags on them. They have, the bags are there. They just do it once. They'll probably get through till the first frost and then they won't have to worry about it again. But, it might be nice if anybody is in contact with the subcontractor to, maybe remind them what those bags are for, since they bothered to zip one up around every tree.
Yeah, we're in contact with Tim Nelson, who's the engineer in charge there, so we can reach out to him. And that's who we were in contact with about the size of the trees. And I heard last week, Kristen, that they were talking about they were going to start planting this week or get some trees in. I don't know the last time anybody's been down there to check on it.
The tree,
I just
do
saw
look good.
said that they were getting ready to close out the project. So my assumption is that they would need to plant them before they leave.
Right.
It's part of the construction contract. So I would assume that would happen within the next week or so.
And talk to the engineer in charge. One mechanism is an uncompleted work agreement where they'll pull out but still have an agreement that they have to come back and finish next year. But talking to the engineer in charge, as Greg suggests, is the way to get this stuff done. Let him know the watering and let him know the concerns. You guys have
Greg, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know if you have any contact, I would appreciate hearing that. Thanks.
Will do.
Okay. I'm going to move on to 3B.
I think Rennie wanted to say something.
Oh, Rennie, you want to say something?
Yes, y'all are talking about Greenkill, and anecdotally, we're hearing lots of complaints about the area that's right above the Five Corners that goes down to the valley there. What's that road?
Wilbur?
That goes down to Rondout. Wilbur, yeah. We're hearing lots of complaints about that. So I'm just passing that on. People are very confused. They feel like there's not enough room for tractor trailers to go through there. Some folks apparently are making a wrong entry and driving on the bike path rather than in the street, which means they're driving between the parked cars and the curb. So I've been over there a couple times. I haven't seen it myself. I'm just passing on what other folks have told me so that you're aware.
Well, we've heard those complaints, and in fact, I was over there with the mayor driving, and we were going towards the Five Corners, and we watched somebody drive onto the bike lane. So it is happening. We did request that DOT put in some bollards at the end for the and they said that they would do that so that the bollards would they wouldn't prevent a car from getting on to the bike lane. Well, maybe they will, but they will definitely prevent cars from driving into the back of a parked car. And some of it's really just people have been driving that intersection a certain way for probably 30 years, and they, have a certain circumference in their brain of how much they need to turn, and they're just not used to it. So it's, I forgot what somebody called it. Maybe Bob, you know the word. There's like a practice period.
Oh, yeah. And there is, when you make alignment changes like that, it takes a good 6 months for people to figure out things have changed. Yeah. That's why you don't do crash studies for the first year, because people are still wandering around trying to figure out what to do. But it settles out. John, you had something to say? Yep. Okay. So we move on to temporary street closures for cafes. What do we hear? John, did you have something to say? I just saw you wave. No? Okay. Temporary street closures. Huh? Oh, he's frozen?
Frozen.
Bob.
John, yes. I love technology.
John's frozen.
I can't read this.
Seem to be having a lot of lag problems, but related to Greenkill Avenue, I've seen people park down on the southbound side of that, right down Wilbur Avenue, where they moved the driving lane over to the curb. Well, the people are effectively blocking the driving lane there, and they're driving out around it. And I don't recall seeing no parking signs there. I think maybe we need to take another look and see if there are signs, and if not, an enforcement issue there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be operational.
Parking in the driving lane.
Does anybody have any opinions about when we should do enforcement? Because it's a little bit of a challenge right now. I mean, people are still adjusting to it, and some people are upset about the new lines. And I don't know, the city going out and enforcing and giving people tickets is going to make anybody happier.
Right.
So but at some point, like, people are kind of parking into the bike lane a little, or in the buffer zone of notice. So I don't know.
Have we done an education? You got to do an education piece before you do enforcement.
Yeah.
You got to tell people this is the way to do this, and before you do enforcement. So I don't know if that's part of the contract, or whether there has to be some other
educational
piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as parking enforcement, like, those guys can put warnings on windshields,
right,
before they go straight to giving tickets out. I mean,
Would it be a warning with the correct instructions on it, or would it just be, like you parked wrong and nobody knows why?
well, I think we could work with them and in customizing it for that specific stretch. I mean, I don't want to speak for parking enforcement, but they're pretty agreeable. We could sort of develop something for them to put on the windshield that says, for this section of Greenkill, there should no longer be parking. Try this area to park instead, or something like that.
Right.
I can reach out to them about it.
Yeah, even if we put something in one of the local papers, kind of here's some directions on how to do this for people that are, I don't know if people read, I don't know what people are reading, if anything. But an education piece sounds like an education piece is the next step.
Well, I think it's something that we're going to need to do in anticipation of Broadway too.
Yeah.
So it would be nice, maybe we could, I don't know, I know I don't have capacity to do it, it's just an idea, but maybe we could do some sort of video demonstration of how to park.
Well, has Broadway got a public information piece in the contract? Has GPI got something in there for that? No? Okay. So we'd have to figure out some way to get that done. But yeah, an education piece is going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
On all these projects. People are just, there's a huge amount of change in the city's traffic, and that goes to what Rennie's concerned about too. This whole elimination of these of the traffic signals. It's an education piece. People are freaking out because their stoplight's gone and they think that that's the end of the world. But, stop signs are more effective, but people have to stop.
Yeah.
Well, that might be something to think about sometimes. Some sort of a traffic. Traffic. You get a bunch of changes coming, and drivers probably should have a way to find that out.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. All we need is money. That's something that everybody's got a lot of in public service right now, public government.
Yeah.
Well, let's think about that, and let's put it on the agenda for a new topic next time, and we'll see if we can do something about education.
Yeah.
Complete streets education, educating people on how to deal with a change of the complete street,
Changing traffic patterns, changing pedestrian patterns,
Yeah.
what the change is, and the benefits of the change.
Right. Why is this a good idea? Right. Always a good idea to stop at a stop sign. I mean, that's kind of been my position, but many people don't see it that way. I don't understand. Okay, so we'll add that to next time's agenda.
Yep.
Traffic pattern changes. Okay, temporary street closures. That's another thing. I mean, how's that? Do you hear anything about that? How's that going? I mean, the whole idea that I've seen it. Uptown has got a bunch of places where they've eliminated parking for on-street dining, and I see it. I guess there's also in the Rondout. I don't know if haven't seen much in Midtown. But I guess it's going well. People they're not banging your door down all beside themselves over it.
No, I mean, I think the main thing is the closures have mainly been in just very specific parking spaces that are out in front of the business that is establishing those sidewalk cafes. We haven't had the agenda item is street closures, but we haven't had any street cafes, which was an option, but people have to submit like a site plan or what. It's mostly been more so the Google that where you have those dining areas in the parking spaces. Seems to be, but like you said, it is concentrated in the Rondout and the Uptown. I think a little bit better there.
It sounds to me like we really don't have to dive into this closure item because they've addressed it in a way that meets everybody's needs. And, I would suggest we drop it from the agenda for us.
Okay.
Anybody object to that or? Okay, let's move on. Oh, here you go. Rennie, here we go. Conversation with Brian Slack. He's not here. From what I understand, their plan was or is, they did a study. They did that, as we all know. I'll just review this quickly for those that may not have been paying attention. They hired a consultant to review a number of intersections that are signalized. And they used the test about whether the signalized intersection met current traffic warrants for signalized intersections. Most of them, all of them didn't. Traffic signals, the problem with traffic signals is they're expensive, they're hard to stop, cause crashes, just like other traffic control devices do. So they went through a process where they were eliminating those that were not warranted. The process, my understanding is, they do the study. Once it's determined that the signal is no longer warranted, tag the signal, four-way stop signs at each of those intersections. So I'm assuming, because I haven't been around much, that they've done some of them or done a number, at least more than one, I would guess. And from what Rennie is saying, some people are unhappy about that. Is that kind of a correct summary of where we are? I don't know how many they've done.
Some people are unhappy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've done the several at least that are in or next to Ward 3. So there's 2 at least on Washington, the one at the intersections of Pearl and Linderman. and then up at Main Street and Pearl Street. And I think there's one or two more right in the area. And so, you know, it's one of those things where some people absolutely freaked out because they think that traffic lights are far more effective than stop signs. They have registered a variety of complaints. I've also gotten a fair number of people who are in favor of the changes because they like that you don't have to wait, you know, especially if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
They're extremely uncomfortable about driving through a red light, but, you know, stop sign, no problem. So the concern, though, the major concern is at the intersection of Linderman and Pearl Street, because that is heavily trafficked when school is in session. And that particular intersection is, you know, difficult. I've had building safety go there because there's a hedge that really obscures the view if you're coming up Linderman from the if you're coming from the country and heading toward downtown when you get to Washington. So they've been given an order to remedy. So they're going to have to take down a significant portion of that hedge to increase visibility. I'm also going to put in a request for something similar at the intersection of Pearl and Washington, because there's a couple of bushes and hedges that obscure the vision there. But that one intersection at Linderman, you know, I've talked with the city engineer about the potential for putting in what he calls a bulb out. DPW is against an actual constructed one, you know, that would be a curb that would come out into the street. But John Schulteis was saying that you can also do painted ones, which would give a visual narrowing of the spot right there. There's also some other options, you know, but there's also the potential that some people have raised of putting in a, you know, a pedestrian light, so that, you know, the one where if you're waiting there, you can push the button and it will then alert folks to the greater danger of somebody crossing the street there. So, you know, anything that you all can think about or discuss in terms of how to protect school children, and we're talking about elementary school children too. So, you know, if it were high school children, I wouldn't be quite so worried, but we're talking about some pretty young folks who go walking through there when school's in session.
Yeah, you know, yeah, putting up a pedestrian, a crosswalk sign, for example. I mean, it's, you know, it's progressive. You know, you start with a crosswalk, then crosswalk sign, and then ultimately, if it gets really bad, lighted. You know, a light of some sort of flashing around the sign is the current fashion. They call them hawks or something. There's a whole. Then, you know, painting a lateral obstruction is never a bad idea in my view. You know, if that's, you know, lateral obstructions can be very effective to slow people down.
Yeah. I was going to say most DPWs are not going to be in favor of a concrete or any kind of hard bulb out. It just that just isn't going to fly.
Right. It's a real pain when you hit it with the snowplow.
It's a real pain. It's a real pain when you're trying to street sweep. It's just a pain.
Yeah. So a painted one though is easier for them to swallow. They can do that. And you know, maybe a pedestrian crossing sign to reinforce the stop sign. You know, and you put it ahead of the stop sign so that it doesn't interfere with the signal. You know, in theory and in practice, it should be the stop sign is an absolute. You know, you stop no matter what. And so this whole California stop where people slide through like they're not, you know, which is illegal, is really an enforcement issue. And I know the cops hate to hear that, but you know, people can slide through it. For some reason, people are afraid to slide through a signal. I don't know why that is. Well, partly it's because when you put a signal in that meets the warrants, if you slide through one, you're going to get creamed. You know, the problem is our signals were, you know, didn't come close to meeting the warrants.
Bob, you can go ahead and admit it. People stop at the traffic lights because they're reading your mind and they can send the information to the CIA. Come on.
That's true. That's true. We know that. So we can, I mean, we can reach out to, well, you could, I don't know what John's thinking. Greg, you might have a better view than we do about what John's thinking about this. I would also caution, well, let's talk to Brian first off, because it's his agenda item and he's still got some resources that he's investing in this conversion. And he may have some thoughts, and his consultants may have some thoughts on what they can do about that. They're a pretty good outfit, and they had a real good, their study approach was pretty sound. So I'd suggest we keep this on the agenda till next time, and we can get Brian here and we can quiz him about this.
Okay, and there's, just so you know, there's all the folks who are on Linderman between Wall Street and Washington, they had already sent me a petition because they're concerned about people speeding in that one block. So I've got a police monitor up there now measuring the traffic. But you know, as often happens, they were giving me estimates of cars speeding up to 70 miles an hour in that one block. I actually tried it myself. I must admit, in a Civic, you know, it's not quite the same thing as a Porsche, close, but you know, and I could only get up to 40. But so, you know, there's definitely perception problem there. And I was thinking too, you know, if they could also think of that intersection is also a difficult one, the one at Washington, at Wall and Linderman, because Washington is so wide there.
Right.
So I was wondering if, you know, if we're going to put in bulb outs at the one intersection, I was wondering if we could paint them in at that intersection also. But, you know, I don't know really what can be done along that one block to try to get people to stay under 30 miles an hour.
Are they using the, you know, it's unfortunate that we don't have more speed limit feedback signs, which I think are very effective. You know, the ones that tell you
how fast you're going.
Yeah. And that would be one of the things Brian talked about. Maybe this is something to get into, which I have not acted on, is the Traffic Safety Board, which is a county creature funded by the state, and there's resources there. And you know, one of the things that could be a benefit, and mostly it's police that go to it and they sit around and talk about enforcement stuff. But some of these things like feedback signs might be an angle there to get them to fund some of those. I'll think about that. But I would suggest we keep this on and see what Brian has to say when we get him in here. We can beat him up about all these people speeding around these now that there's no lights. And he may have some resources. His consultant may have an education piece left in his contract. So
but like I said, I've got, I've talked to a couple of people who actually live, I think the people who live on Washington tend to favor the stop signs. The people who live on the cross streets tend to favor the traffic lights. And so part of it is just making sure that we can open up the views for the people who are on the cross streets as they're entering into Washington. But like I said, now I've gotten more people who are in favor of the stop signs. They aren't necessarily who live right there, but in general, I think it's a minority of people who are upset about the change.
And one of the things that Brian, consultant, Pointy made when he did his public presentation was that from a study perspective, the stop signs are significantly safer. You know, so it really is a better way to go.
But intuitively, since people have been trained to observe traffic signals, you've got to re-educate them that stop signs actually make sense. And that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you know, and everybody's forgotten their driving manuals that stop signs, regardless, are what takes precedent. But right now, it's a big re-education. And the more they see it in other places, the more they'll get used to it.
And then I don't know if this is part of the Complete Streets purview, but I think the city could do a better job of letting folks know about these changes.
Really?
Because I mean, we had voted on the Common Council, you know, that we were going to support the shift from traffic lights to stop signs. And I felt like it was only 2 or 3 weeks went by, and all of a sudden, you know, they were changed, and the aldermen in the area had not been warned at all that the changes were going to happen. The city did not send out a letter. A lot of people said, why didn't you have a public forum? And I said, well, we did in 2019. It was sponsored by the county. Well, we never heard about it, you know? So at the very least, I think when these changes are imminent, it would be really important for the city to announce them and provide, you know, some of the rationale. So when I've told people, you know, it's going to cost us $225,000 to replace that traffic light with the modern one, they all of a sudden change their tune, and it's like, oh, kind of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, if the city would send out letters to the folks who live within, you know, like a 3-4 block radius of each of those intersections, I think that this would go a really long way to reducing some of the upset about these changes.
I think that's correct. And once again, it's all part of the re-education process, and whether that comes through when we let new contracts that we put that piece there, or if it's something that we just as the city have to start a better job of, it's just simply people don't know. And as long as they don't know, they're going to continue to complain.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you know what? I wasn't involved in that project. So Greg, do you know, was that a contract that was bid by the engineering department, or?
I think the county did it for you
Yeah, the county did it.
because they're
Oh,
nice.
they did it for us. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
The MPO did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it has clean air benefits. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why they,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I knew that they had done the study. I just didn't know that the construction, this is actually the first time I heard that construction in particular happened. But,
well, DPW was involved with that. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Because they have to like bag the light
yeah.
and put the stop signs in, and they moved the stop bars because at some of those locations, the stop bars were for, you know, a signalized intersection, which is much further back. So now the stopping point is closer to the crosswalk, which is another thing that people have to get used to.
Emily, you got Emily.
I think summer, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Emily.
Well, Kristen, we might be saying the same thing, and that was about communications. So I wanted to give our communications department a bit of credit, that if that project didn't come from the city and no one told our communications director the details, she wouldn't have known to send out the information about it. I was trying to look through my email to see if a press release went out or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. Kristen, were you going to add more?
I was just going to say that Summer does a weekly road work update. So we've been trying to keep track of the DOT projects, and it's part of the mayor's newsletter, and that, you know, this project just got missed.
Right.
So
Wasn't a city project really, but the city has an impact. So guys like Rennie get, you know, get
Yeah.
the benefit of having it sprung on them. Okay, so what do we do? Where are we now? What do we do with this?
Well, I wanted to, so procedure wise, so it doesn't happen again, is there a way that we can flag it so when there's a county transportation project that our communications director gets known about it?
I think that would be a great, and I think that's really a conversation to have with Brian. They're rare that the county's going to do anything in the city, you know, on their own, but he should have a process for letting her know that we're going to do something.
Yeah.
So when we next month, when he's on the agenda for this, we can beat him up over that. That'll be great.
We will have a discussion.
Poor Brian. We just haven't watched the recording of this meeting.
Well, he's young, you know, he'll get over it.
All right. Well, thanks for letting me visit today. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
All
Ryan.
right. Bye.
Bye.
E-bike scooter e-draft policy. I haven't done anything on this. I don't know if anybody else has, aside from the fact that I still think Emily should have her e-bike.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if anybody's heard anything now that these pathways are starting to open up and be more used. Are people, you know, getting any feedback about e-bikes on them? You know, my experience is a lot of times people don't realize that it's an e-bike that just passed them. You know.
Right. The only thing I've heard recently is that actually on certain county rail trails, they don't allow it. And that'd be something to talk to Brian Slack. Because I think on the Ashokan Rail Trail, you're not supposed to have an e-bike. It's a speed issue. They can consider those bad problems. So.
I did see that sign up there on the Ashokan, no motorized. You know, and maybe that's the right way to go. I mean, I don't know if the city wants to do that. Or not. I mean, it would take the common council. I don't know, anybody have any thoughts on that, or should we let it lie, or should we, as a council, do we make a recommendation?
I think there's another one where I think it'd be good to hear from Brian, since the county is not to just keep passing the buck, but since the county has had to deal with this issue and has made this decision, see, you know, how they came to that determination, you know, and if the same logic applies to the city.
State law on our part, is that correct? I think state law says that it happens unless we say no, or is it the other way around?
Can't remember.
I can't either. And we did talk about that, about whether it's, you know, I should go back and look at that.
Yeah, we can check the minutes.
Yeah. So at this point, we certainly don't want to, let's talk to Brian and see where the county's logic was for prohibiting it. And if we want to be consistent with the county, we can make a recommendation to the common council that e-bikes are prohibited from the pathways. There's no way we're going to prohibit them from the streets. You know, that wouldn't be appropriate. But maybe maybe mixed use paths with an e-bike could be an issue. Of course, there's not that much fun mixed use paths with a bicycle if there's a lot of pedestrians.
I was going to say, why don't we just wait and see what Brian has to say and find out why it was prohibited?
Yeah.
Go from there.
That sounds like it makes sense. He's going to be sorry he missed the meeting. New business. Thomas Street parking. That's John's item. What's up? John's not moving though. It's like watching a horror picture. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
if you try turning off your camera, you
At
might.
Thomas Street, I've observed as many as 10 cars parked in the bike lanes. I've observed as many as 10 cars parked in the bike lanes on Thomas Street. And many times when I go by there, they're wondering if we need to just a general ban on parking on Thomas Street. Even a no stopping, standing, no parking sign, or a tollway zone for that matter, as it seems to be regularly abused there. It's,
Okay.
you know, it's part of the Empire State Trail. It's dropping right into our new protected bike lanes on Broadway. And I think people are trying to avoid paying the parking fees in the city lot there. And I think we need to make a hard decision and a hard rule that there's no parking on that bike lane area. I don't know what others' thoughts are, but
I wonder if it's the same people.
I don't know. I didn't keep track of plates or anything.
I wonder if it's worth it. I mean, Greg, you're saying the parking people are cooperative. I wonder if it's worth a flyer on the windshields of people parking on Thomas Street saying, don't park in the bike lane.
Yeah, I mean, it is in the code now that there's no parking in the bike lane. They can enforce it. So.
Well, they could write a ticket then.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that the parking enforcement folks are working in the evening now, and that's often when I see them parked there.
Gotcha. All right.
They
Yeah, I
did
can-
take care of, they did take care of the problem on Hurley Avenue with that auto place that was perpetually parked on the sidewalk. I spoke with parking enforcement, and within a few days of that, I noticed that they were no longer leaving the motorcycle in the sidewalk. The cars weren't on the sidewalk, so they did go right out and address that.
Well, it's worth a mention to him, I think. Do you think it's worth a mention to him, Greg? Is that?
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. And I've got the next step would be to recommend to the city council that they prohibit parking on Thomas Street because it interferes with which we could do anyway if we wanted. I mean, we could send that recommendation to the mayor to send on to the city council. Anyway, is that a good thing to do?
I would be inclined to do that because it's Empire State Trail, and really the only thing there is the restaurant, and they're within 50 feet of the municipal parking lot there. So I don't see why they would need to park in the bike lanes or park in front of the restaurant for that matter.
Right. The only thing I would say is we are currently in the redesign of that parking lot. And in the plans, there are spaces on Thomas Street that are going to be striped as parking in order to retain the amount of spots that currently are being held by that parking lot. We've moved some of the spots into the street because we're
That's
trying to
probably not a good thing with the Empire State Trail.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know. You're going to delineate parking spots.
Yeah.
And you're avoiding the trail.
Yep.
Assuming. I don't know which side of the street. There might be something to think about in the design. How do you make sure that people don't park on the trail? But delineating spots is one way to accomplish that. If you
Right.
keep them far enough away from this trail. I don't know if they're on the other side of the street. I don't know. I don't know what you've got designed.
The design would, if you're coming in from Broadway, on the left-hand side, there would be parking up against that sidewalk that is around the parking lot that's there now.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be once you get past Sacramento, so where you're having, if you're having issues closer to Broadway, there would be no parking there.
Mhm.
But I'd have to see where the cars are parking now.
Sounds like it's fallen into your lap to take a look at it as a designer to see what you can do for the next step to discourage people from parking there.
Right.
That'd probably be the next step in the process is to take a look at how it pulls into your design, so we can preserve the Empire State Trail.
Yep.
Well, all right, that's good. So before we take any action, let's look at where you are with your design because we don't want to.
Yeah, there's been a lot of utilization
Down there. Yeah.
Well, and I'll send over, I'll talk to whoever's managing that parking lot project now and see if it would be okay to send complete streets. Kristen's smiling.
Who's designing it? Do we know who's designing it?
QPI is designing it. Yeah.
Oh, is it? All right. Good.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a public information meeting, so we may need to wait because the
no
document
parking.
still,
That makes sense.
I don't know how public the documents are yet because they're
Yeah.
still in draft form.
Yeah.
So, but we will hold a public information meeting for the project.
Okay. And now two of you know the issue that can be, that they need to think about.
Yeah, I think once you see the design, I mean, the design really has the trail wrapping around the parking lot right from the Midtown Linear Park. So it's kind of hard to imagine without seeing it on paper, but I think that the parking spots are in the design are located in an appropriate space, but when we put it up, folks can give feedback.
Okay. That sounds good. And when are you going to be done? When are they going to be done?
I think the project advisory committee came to I don't know if it was an agreement in the last week. Sean Foster was managing the project, and
Yeah,
he's
Claudette, are you on that committee?
Yeah, but I don't This is for Elmendorf, Vauxhall. I don't remember where we came out on that, quite honestly. So, but I am on the committee.
So we have a committee member here who can also carry feedback back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good.
so John Schulte's going to be managing that Midtown parking lots going forward, but my office will be managing the public engagement on it.
Okay.
Or well, my office and probably Emily and Summer. We'll be using engagekingston.com.
Oh, okay, all right. Which
All right.
also could be a mechanism for this education stuff we're talking about,
Yeah,
Good.
that's
you know?
Good. Maybe if you just said all the information was,
Yeah, there's a,
you know,
a good idea. We could have a section on traffic
Yeah,
issues or traffic education.
right.
Yeah.
Things in the city are a mess and you also need to learn how to drive differently. I think that would be the,
well, how much tact.
I think it would be nice if we could get some videos, like tutorial videos of how to park, but that costs something, so I don't know how we do that.
right. Well, that's probably a good mechanism. It's probably something we should talk about. How do we, and I think it's a good role for the advisory council to help with
Yeah.
that education piece. You know?
You guys could be stars in the videos.
Yeah, no thanks.
You know, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Play a part.
That's right. This would be a big chance, you know? All right.
All right, so next week.
So we're gonna leave that with Claudette and with Greg and Kristen to give feedback and look anxiously forward for the public hearing. John, public meeting. John, you raised your hand, but then you froze.
yeah, it keeps freezing here. Use of the, I just wanted to mention it. I've seen a tremendous amount of that new Empire State Trail along Greenkill and Railroad Avenue. I'm really surprised how many people are on that. A lot of kids on bikes, a lot of adults with little kids learning how to ride. It's surprising to me just how many people are using that little stretch. I think keeping it well connected to the Green Line and the Empire State Trail as we get over by Thomas Street area is probably very important.
Pathways are hugely popular. It's I'm always astonished when it. I freely admit that I was one who said about the walkway over the Hudson that it was a terrible idea and nobody'd use it. It's the busiest park in the state of New York.
Nope.
Which is why I was in transportation. And not
Right. That's exactly right.
all right. Announcements, communications, events, updates. Anything to Emily?
I wanted to mention that Bike Friendly Kingston and the YMCA Tom Polk is doing a bike bell and light installation event. It's part of a bike repair on October 20th from 3 to 6 p.m. This is coming up because there's been reports that cyclists are being pulled over for not having bells on their bikes. So Bike Friendly Kingston and the Y is trying to be proactive, trying to create some materials about bike laws in the city of Kingston.
Really? I only have a bell on one of my bikes. Think about that.
A good idea, Emily.
Yeah. Lights too. Lights at night though. Only at night, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to send you the materials when we finish them.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah. Okay. Any other announcements, updates, events? O Positive is wild. We have to go and tour the mural, which I have not done. I think it's pretty neat. All right. Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's a beautiful day outside. Who wants to move to adjourn? Claudette, you got it. I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll do
Okay,
that.
second. I assume all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Poor John, it's like watching one of those old monster pictures, you know, the monster is coming in, you know. Yeah, you gotta work on that. All right, well, thank everybody. I appreciate your coming. I appreciate your attendance. We're done for this time, and more to come next time. I don't know when our next meeting is. When's our next meeting, Greg? Do you know? I don't have any idea.
Oh, I don't know offhand.
All right, we'll warn you beforehand.
Yeah.
And I'll copy you with the stuff that we send around. For example, the note that I sent to Ed and the police.
Oh, I have December 9th.
Number 9. Oh, geez. Okay. The plague will be over. Everything will be great. The election will be over. Remember to vote. Everybody vote. I voted yesterday. I voted today.
Vote, vote, vote.
That's important.
I'll be a poll worker up at Edson on election day if you vote there. So wear a
I thought the world
mask.
was ending on,
All I have to say. Are you going to be there, Emily?
doesn't the world end on election day?
I think it does. Yeah. Take your bicycle. Remember when the bicycle demonstrations were happening in New York City and everybody was taking hundreds of bicycles, were going to Times Square and riding around. And so I think we all should get on our bicycles and go out and ride around the city, slow things down.
In the Bay Area, that was called critical mass. So yes.
Yes. In New York City as well. Yeah, yeah.
Critical mass. Yep. And they were a pain if you were trying to get anywhere.
They were in New York too.
Oh God, yes.
Where I got my sticker, bicycling is not a crime. All right.
Okay.
All right. And remember to vote.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Greg.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.